A new Consumer Reports investigation out just this morning finds that there may be more mercury in canned tuna than you realize. Think that can of tuna in your pantry is a safe, healthy bargain? Think again. Some cans hit you with a stench the moment you open them, like stagnant sewer water. Think you're eating fish? In reality, it's mostly fillers and additives, mushy flakes that collapse, like wet paper and a slimy film, clinging to the lid. For seniors, the danger goes far beyond bad taste, blood, pressure spikes, kidney strain, even paralysis, and the industry riddled with fraud, price fixing, and recalls for deadly botulism. Today, we are exposing 5 canned tuna brands you must avoid, and 2 that are actually safe to eat. Watch until the end because what you've been keeping in your pantry might not be as harmless as you think. Starting the list with number 5, Starkist may sound like America's tuna, but the star is fading fast. For decades, this brand carried a friendly image. Budget, friendly cans, easy meals, and that cartoon fish mascot telling families to trust the taste. But behind the label is a history of betrayal most shoppers never hear about. Here's the first gut punch. Starkist was convicted by the U.S. Department of Justice for price fixing. Not sloppy accounting, not a mistake, a deliberate scheme to inflate prices across the country. The penalty, $100 million, that's not pocket change, that's hush money to cover years of gouging families who thought they were buying an affordable protein. While they lined their pockets, quality took a nose dive. Customers opened cans expecting firm flakes of tuna only to be greeted with mush that collapsed like wet tissue. Some described the smell as if a fish tank had been left out in the sun, sharp, sour, and impossible to ignore. Others reported biting down on sand like grit, as if their tuna had been rolled across a dirty factory floor. Would you still trust your pantry now? This betrayal stings especially hard for seniors. Many reach for canned tuna, thinking it's heart-healthy and convenient. But what you actually get from Starkist can push blood pressure to dangerous levels. The sodium content in a single serving can reach up to 360 milligrams, nearly 1/5 of the recommended daily limit. And that's before adding mayo or bread. For someone on heart meds or with kidney concerns, that's not lunch, that's a trap. And here's another layer nobody talks about. The World Health Organization has labeled processed meats a Group 1 carcinogen. That puts them in the same danger category as cigarettes and asbestos. Tuna should never be on that list. Yet, with the way Starkist overprocesses their product, fillers, chemical brine, and questionable quality controls, you're not eating real fish. You're eating a science experiment sealed in tin. But wait until you see what's lurking inside. Staff forums have even shared complaints about cans arriving slimy to the touch, lids that bulge slightly, or liquid inside that looks cloudy like dishwater after scrubbing greasy pans. These aren't isolated grumbles, they're red flags. The FDA itself has issued warnings over improper storage and contamination risks tied to canned seafood. Safer in Europe? Often yes. The EU forces stricter labeling and lower sodium standards. Meanwhile, American shoppers get the short end of the net. So here's the question for you. Have you ever cracked open a Starkist can and smelled that sour stench? Did you eat it anyway, hoping it was just one bad batch? Drop your experience in the comments. We want to know how bad it got in your kitchen. If you're looking for a fix, skip the mass market mascot brands. Go with smaller, batch tuna or organic store labels that list fishing methods and sodium levels clearly. Even Costco's organic store brand tuna often comes cleaner than a can of Starkist. And remember this, Starkist didn't just stumble. They schemed, profited, and let standards slide while the public trusted their name. That's not an accident. That's the system working exactly as intended. If a so-called American classic can crumble like this, wait until you see the mermaid brand that fooled millions. And hey, hungry for the truth? Consider subscribing now. Floating in next, chicken of the sea looks friendly, but what's inside isn't swimming in your favor. The smiling mermaid logo and the phrase seafood with integrity make it feel wholesome, like it came straight from crystal blue waters. But the truth is, those cans hide some of the worst shortcuts in the tuna industry. Instead of whole chunks of tuna, many cans are padded with scraps of other fish, bits of white fish blended in just enough to pass as chunk light. That's not integrity, that's a bait and switch. Consumers thought they were buying real tuna, but often got a mash of leftovers that barely resembles the fish on the label. And then there's the smell. Customers say cracking open a can sometimes hits you with the odor of watered-down cat food. The meat inside, mushy and watery with a texture so soft it collapses into paste. Some even described a slimy film floating on top, turning what should be protein-rich fish into something that looks more like cloudy dishwater. Chicken of the Sea has been forced to recall cans after metal fragments were found inside. We're not talking tiny flakes either. Reports mentioned small steel shards from defective lids slipping into the mix. Imagine spooning tuna onto bread and crunching down on a piece of steel. One customer on a consumer forum even joked grimly, the only thing chunkier than the ton was the metal. Health risks go beyond unpleasant surprises. Sodium levels in chicken of the sea are dangerously high. A single 2 ounces serving packs around 360 milligrams of sodium, about 20% of the daily limit. Seniors on blood, pressure, or kidney medications can hit half their safe daily sodium intake just by eating a single can. And that doesn't account for mayo, crackers, or bread that often come with it. And let's not forget mercury. Independent tests have flagged some chicken of the sea products, especially Chunk Light, for levels close to the FDA's danger threshold. Mercury doesn't just vanish from your body, it builds up over time, leading to tremors, fatigue, and neurological damage. For older adults or pregnant women, that's a risk too serious to ignore. Ever thought your tuna might bite back? The betrayal here is clear. A brand that has marketed itself as family-friendly has put profit ahead of safety, pushing out cans filled with scraps, mush, and metal. Instead of protecting customers, they count on name, recognition, and cheap prices to keep people filling carts. It's the illusion of trust. So, what's the fix? Choose line-caught brands that clearly label their species and origin. Companies like Wild Planet and Safe Catch openly show their fishing methods and mercury testing results. They cost more, but at least you know you're eating tuna, not mystery meat with a side of steel. Have you ever opened a can of chicken of the sea and thought, this smells wrong? Did you eat it anyway because the name looked safe? Comment below. We want to know how many of you trusted the mermaid. That shine on the label hides a darker truth. If the mermaid can lie, what about the bee? The next brand turned your childhood lunches into a corporate joke. Buzzing in the middle, Bumblebee stings hard but not with flavor. For decades, this brand was a pantry staple. Parents tossed it into UX school lunches. Seniors counted on it as an affordable source of protein. But the you can trust today is nothing like the one you grew up with. Instead of firm chunks, many customers now open Bumblebee cans to find a soupy mess. A watery film floats on top, the tuna collapses into mush. The kind of texture you'd expect from canned pet food, not something sold as human-grade seafood. The smell, sour, almost metallic, closer to damp cardboard than the ocean. But here's what they won't print on the label. In 2016, Bumblebee had to recall more than 31,000 cases of tuna after contamination risks were flagged. That's not a typo. 31,000 cases pulled from shelves. The FDA confirmed that the risk came from processing errors and contamination meant some cans were unsafe to eat. And the hits keep coming. Over the years, customers noticed that Bumblebee quietly changed its recipe. What used to be tuna is now closer to a filler blend. Whistleblowers hinted that Only around 70% of the contents are actual fish, the rest being additives and binding agents to stretch profits. Imagine paying for protein, but almost a third of it isn't real protein at all. Would you feed this to your kids? But here's the real shocker. Bumblebee filed for bankruptcy in 2019. To stay afloat, they sold to a foreign conglomerate that also controls a web of cheap processed food labels worldwide. When ownership shifts to a massive holding group, do you think they're investing in quality? Or are they squeezing every penny out of the can? For seniors, the betrayal hits even harder. Sodium levels can soar well, past 300 milligrams per serving, a nightmare for anyone on blood pressure or kidney meds. Add in potential mercury exposure, an issue that watchdog groups say U.S. regulators are too soft on compared to stricter European standards. And this family brand starts looking more like a health trap. One customer review described the taste as like reheated fish scraps left in dirty dishwater. Another forum comment joked, "I had to double-check I didn't grab the cat's food." These aren't rare outliers, they're everyday complaints. Ever wonder how a brand with a B logo could sting your health this badly? Here's the fix. Skip the corporate cans with cut corners. Go for us verified sustainable tuna like Safe Catch or Wild Planet. They are pricier, but at least you're not spooning mushy into your body. So what do you think? Have you noticed Bumblebee doesn't taste the way it used to? Drop your story in the comments, because this isn't nostalgia, it's neglect. If the bee lost its buzz, brace yourself. The next can comes with olive oil and a side of betrayal. Now climbing higher, Genova's fancy label screams Mediterranean style, but inside the story smells fishy. At first glance, the can looks premium. The words packed in olive oil sparkle. The label carries an old-world design, and the whole thing whispers quality. But once the lid peels back, that illusion collapses fast. What greets you isn't golden olive oil. It's an oily slick that floats like motor grease on a garage floor. The fish strands break apart into soggy ribbons. Bite into it, and instead of rich tuna flavor, you get a chemical aftertaste that clings to your tongue. Premium or just overpriced fish water? Here's the real betrayal. Gova markets itself as gourmet tuna. The branding tells you it's a step above the cheap cans. But independent testers and customer complaints point to the opposite. The cuts aren't premium at all, they're trimmings, the kind of cheap meat left over from mass processing. H-E-B, the grocery store chain that stocks its own versions, has been criticized for using private label tuna with little transparency about sourcing. Shoppers assume it's high grade because of the sleek packaging. The reality, it's barga. In bin fish sold at a luxury price. And the numbers tell an even darker story. A single can of Genova's tuna in olive oil can pack more than 350 milligrams of sodium per 2 ounces serving. That's nearly 20% of your daily recommended intake in just a couple of forkfuls. For seniors, managing blood pressure, kidney disease, or heart medications, that's a disaster. A sandwich could easily push someone past their safe limit without them realizing. Would Europe even allow this? In fact, many European standards for canned tuna enforce stricter sodium thresholds, while in the US brands like Gova get away with pushing the limits. The olive oil isn't always the premium, extra virgin quality you think. Some consumer reports flag that the oil is bland, refined, and sometimes mixed with cheaper vegetable oils. You're not getting Italian delicacy, you're getting bulk filler swimming in grease. And that grease coats every bite with a clammy texture that makes the fish feel old before you've even tasted it. So why does this matter? Because seniors often buy premium tuna thinking they're investing in health, but instead of clean protein, they're loading up on sodium, cheap cuts, and mystery oils. That betrayal isn't just financial, it's physical. Would you still call it Mediterranean if it leaves your mouth tasting like a chemical lab? Here's the fix. If you want true olive oil tuna, look for European certified brands that meet stricter fishing and oil standards. Products with the MSC Bluefish label or pole and line caught actually back up the promise. Yes, they're pricier, but at least you know you're not eating oily Mush dressed up as gourmet. Name and shame time. Have you ever bought Gova or an HB can thinking it was a cut above, only to gag at the taste? Drop it in the comments. Let's see how many others were fooled by the fancy label. If a premium can turns toxic, wait until you hear how R. Ecols exposed a trio of names hiding on shelves. Taking the bottom spot, these cans prove that shiny labels can hide a silent killer. The packaging looks clean. Words like Mediterranean, style, or yellowfin and olive oil sound classy, even healthy. On the shelf, they look harmless, but peel back the lid and the truth is terrifying, because sometimes the most dangerous can of tuna looks perfectly normal. The FDA confirmed it. Cans from Goa, Van Camp's, and even Trader Joe's were recalled due to a botulism risk. That's not just bad tuna. That's a life-threatening bacteria, sealed in a can waiting for you to open it. And here's the worst part. You wouldn't even know. No sour smell, no slimy texture, no cloud of rot when you break the seal. The can looks fine. The tuna looks fine. You could fork it onto a sandwich with a smile, never realizing you just served yourself poison. Would you notice if the can that killed you looked totally normal? Botulism isn't ordinary food poisoning. It doesn't just give you cramps or diarrhea. It paralyzes, starting with your muscles, then your lungs. It can literally stop your breathing. For seniors or anyone on heart and kidney meds, the risk isn't just higher, it's fatal. And what caused it? Defective, easy open lids. Tiny design flaws that let in air, creating the perfect breeding ground for Clostridium botulinum. The FDA recall notices even listed the exact lot codes. But let's be honest, how many shoppers know to check lot codes when they're tossing a can in the cart? Here's the betrayal. These brands knew. Reports suggest they were aware of packaging errors that increase the risk. But instead of pulling products early, they looked the other way. Why? Because recalls and redesigns cost money, and profits matter more than your safety. One batch from Van Camp's alone affected thousands of cans. Trader Joe's, a place people often see as a health-conscious haven, was caught in the same recall. Net. That hits harder because Trader Joe's has a reputation for clean, safe foods. If even they can't guarantee basic safety, who can? One customer's reaction was, "I opened a can and thought it tasted flat, now I know why." Botulism deaths are rare, yet when they happen, they're often linked to canned goods. The CDC has tracked cases back to home canned vegetables and commercial products alike. And while Europe has tighter lid integrity testing, in the US, those same cans slipped onto shelves. Is it really Mediterranean style if the only trip you take is to the ER? So what can you do? Always check the FDA recall list. It takes seconds online, and stick to verified, safe brands that publish testing data. If Effican looks bulged, dented, or off, don't risk it. Toss it. Your life is worth more than a $2 can. Would you ever trust a brand again after knowing it shipped cans that could paralyze you? Drop your honest thoughts below. If shiny labels can hide a silent killer, what else is lurking in your pantry? So, those are the 5 disasters. But don't panic. There are at least 2 brands that won't betray you. Now rising back, up Safe Catch proves honesty still exists in a can. After 5 disasters, here's a name that doesn't play games with your health. Most tuna brands test a few samples from a shipment. Safe Catch, they test every single fish for mercury, not a batch, not a random sample, every fish. That means if a tuna doesn't pass, it never makes it into the can. Numbers don't lie, and Safe Cat shows them. This one actually respects your health. That kind of commitment isn't cheap and it isn't fast, but it's the only way to guarantee mercury levels stay low enough for seniors, pregnant women, and anyone with heart concerns. If you've got blood pressure meds on the shelf for kidney issues to manage, this is the defer. NCE between safe protein and a silent hazard. Let's compare. Open a can of the usual suspects, Starkist, Bumblebee, Chicken of the Sea. What do you see? Mushy paste, flakes that collapse into wet tissue. Sometimes a sour fishy odor, sometimes a greasy film, floating like chemical soup. Now open a can of Safe Catch. The difference is immediate.